Good morning, Krushna, Patil, respected heads and teachers, and my fellow students. I'm sure a lot of us went to see the movie Everest over the weekend and had an absolutely enthralling experience. Following suit, today's edition of the Leadership Series welcomes Ms. Krushna Patil, one of the youngest Indian mountaineers to have successfully ascended Everest at age 19. Ms. Patil's journey began from her hometown Pune in 2007 when she enrolled for mountaineering courses held by the Nehru Institute of Mountaineering in Uttarkashi. By 2008, she had already conquered the 7,100-foot summit of Mount Satalpan in the Garhwal Himalayas. Conquering Everest in 2009 made her the youngest female Indian to climb Mount Everest at age 19. And she inspired young climbers just like her to break these records. Ms. Patil holds the distinction of being the first Indian woman to have summited the highest peaks in 6 out of the 7 continents. She was a recipient of the Rajiv Gandhi Award in 2009 and the Maharashtra Ratna in 2010, amongst other felicitations. Apart from being a mountaineer, she is a motivational speaker who focuses on achieving the impossible and succeeding against all odds. She is also the program facilitator for the Indian chapter of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development and the Tech. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Ms. Patil on stage.
To introduce myself a little bit, I think I'm a compilation of contradictions. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. Little mistakes which I think I'll correct over the records that have been broken and continents that I wasn't able to. But I'm a compilation of contradictions. My father was a traditional, strict man. My mother, an adventurous freak. I'm totally undisciplined, but when it comes to going after a goal, I'm completely obsessed and do not see anything else. I'm hard in my ways, I'm set hard in my ways, yet I love to experiment with every type of fear in the world, every avenue possible. I'm someone who doesn't believe in God, but my best friends are Shiva and Krishna. And I love mythology, and it follows me into the mountains all the time. And the biggest contradiction of all, I was born in Bombay, but I think I took birth at the highest point in the world. Mountaineering is one of the most exuberating sports. As a child, the mountains have always been a part of my life. As a family, we used to drive up from Pune to the Himalayas every single year. 3 months of my life was spent in the mountains every year. And we never lived in tents, we never lived in hotels. We always made friends with the locals, spoke to the farmers, asked them if we could pitch our tents in their farms. We attended weddings with them, and 3 months was spent. We would cook our own meals, or we would put up showers under a tree and have a bath. We traveled with our dog, we skied, and we trekked through the mountains. My parents were not mountaineers, they were just adventure freaks. There was nothing that stopped us, there was nothing that said, oh my God, we can't do this. I think I spent all my childhood years dreaming about the peaks. I didn't even know that mountaineering was a profession. We'd all heard that Jamie Park had climbed Everest. But that's all that we knew. I didn't know mountaineering was a sport. I didn't know there were institutions that actually taught climbing mountains. And I didn't know that it could be a profession. Growing up, the mountains became a part of my life. They became a place where I felt one with everything. Over the course of time, I realized what the mountains actually do to you and why we feel like that. But initially, it was just the love for nature, just the love for the mountains. The first time that I did a about 9 to 10 years old. This is the Gangotri Valley, and we trekked about 22 kilometers, 18 kilometers to Gangotri, and then 4 kilometers ahead to Tapovan as well. My hardest trek, I still remember each and every bit of that trek. At some point, we had this foreigners group that was crossing a bridge, a concrete bridge made over the river, and right in front of us, that entire bridge collapsed. And you know, the people went down, and then they couldn't come back on this side, so they went on that side. And then they had to walk all the way to Tapovan to come back to this side, because there was nothing on that side. That night, I think I got a very high fever. My mother was there, and I still remember that entire time. But as a person, I only wanted to be a dancer. I didn't know mountaineering was a profession, and growing up, I only danced. Like, if I was as passionate as I am about mountaineering today, dance was the only thing that I wanted to do. And I never imagined myself to do anything else in the world. But when I did my basic mountaineering course, everything changed. I first got an Institute of Mountaineering as a 15-year-old. It was December of 2005. I traveled alone from Pune to Delhi, and from Delhi to Dehradun, and from Dehradun to Uttarkashi. And I still remember, I always wanted to be in a boarding school, but my father never allowed it. And I used to read Enid Blyton, some boarding school book, I don't remember the name now. But, so I went up to Welland School, and I heard so much about the school. They were on holiday, the winter vacations were going on. I went and met the principal over there at her residence, and she was having a party. It was like 8 o'clock in the night. I went with my backpack. I was 15 years old. I went up to her and I said, you know, I don't want to live in a hotel in Dehradun. I don't know how it is. Can you please let me stay in your dormitory for the night? I'll leave for Uttarkashi tomorrow morning. And she was just like, where did a 15-year-old girl come to my school from? And I stayed in her house actually that night. The next morning I took a bus from Dehradun to Corbett National Park. I said, you know, if I've come this far, maybe I'll just go check out that. I took an 8-hour ride to Ramnagar, and I made friends with the conductor, who then took me to a circuit house, to a dormitory, and said that would be safe because it was like $100 for a bed. And I actually followed him through like a jungle path and went to the circuit house, and then I found this Bengali family over there, and my mother spoke to them over the phone. I didn't have a mobile, because somebody in the family had a mobile. And I did my first adventure course, 15 days, and I swore that I would come back for the basic mountaineering course. After my 12th standard boards, I went for my basic mountaineering course, and this was a life changer. I was never interested in studies. I knew that my life wouldn't be defined by a certificate or a degree. This I knew from the beginning. Also, I was a dancer, so you know, I knew that I wanted to do that. So I was in no way going to enroll myself in a college and sit for 3 years in lectures and do any of that. I wanted to travel, I wanted to dance, and so, but after my basic course, everything changed. I didn't want to dance anymore. All I wanted to do was climb. I went to the principal, the vice principal of the institute. Again, 17 years old, I walk up to the vice principal, a major papa. And I said, sir, see, I'm not going to go back and do any graduation. Why don't you keep me here for 3 years and teach me everything about mountaineering? And he was like, girl, go back, see what you've got in your 12th standard results, try to study something, come back for the advanced course. If you do well, we'll think of something. If you're still this obsessed with mountaineering when you come next year, maybe we'll do something. I came back next year. I went for a diploma for dance to Bangalore. I came back for the advanced course in 2008. And I think I proved my obsession to my instructors, and then I got a magical break. So NIM, the institute, was going to have a pre-Everest expedition on Mount Sutherland, 7075 meters. It's one of the most technical peaks in the Garhwal Himalayas. And being a part of the NIM pre-Everest expedition to Sutherland was like getting a break in a Yash Raj film. Like, in the mountaineering world, it was like the biggest thing to have gotten, especially for me who was just like the basic course and advanced course certified. People generally take many more years to get onto an expedition like this. And of course, it wasn't easy to get onto an expedition like this. I begged and I kept calling the sirs and saying, "Sir, please take me." And it was a big risk for them as well. Major Thapa had already lost 2 people on earlier expeditions on this mountain. And so to scare me off, he spoke to my mother and he told her that, "Ma'am, if she comes, I do not guarantee that she will return." My mother thought about it for a while and she said, "Well, if my daughter has to die, she'll die on the street tomorrow here. It's better she dies on doing something that she loves doing in the mountains." And he was just shell-shocked. He's like, "Okay, I will take your daughter." Sutherland was the best, it was my best teacher. To be on a new mountain, to be on such a high peak at that immature level of mountaineering, it taught me everything. It's quite a technical peak. It has this ridge here. This is an 800 feet knife ridge. You can see it here better maybe. So if you can see, this is us climbing. The 3 dots here, that's us climbing. It's got a 15,000 feet drop on either side, and we literally catwalk with shoes that are like 2 kgs, together. We have crampons on them, and we have 10 kgs on our back. And when we walk this ridge, our camp one is somewhere here, okay, here. And our camp, so if I can show you here, our camp 1 is like behind this mound. And our camp 2 is here, and the summit is here. And the picture is taken from base camp. So we started from here at 5 on the 12th of September. And we got a weather report that there will be no, it had been snowing for a week. We were stuck here at this camp for a week. And we were ready to give up on the expedition. Our leader, Mr. Thapa, called up Uttarkashi, our headquarters, and said, "Sir, we've been stuck here for 7 days. It's been continuously. I think we should back down." And our expedition leader, he said, no coming down. If you want, I'll send you rations by helicopter, but you're going in something." We had a weather window of 12 hours, and we just decided that, okay, tonight we leave. Weather window meant that there would be no snowfall. Throughout the night, we were lashed with winds that came from the right. I still feel them, like it was as if the mountain was slapping you and saying, "Get off." And then there were these spin drifts that happen. So when you're walking on the ridge, because there's fresh snow and because there's movement, every time the wind hits, wherever there's movement, which means that wherever you are walking, spin drifts are created. And they're basically small tornadoes, especially made personally for you. And they go, and it's like, they just slap you. I remember we walked from about 8 o'clock, we got onto the ridge. About 8 in the night, we got onto the ridge. To about 1 o'clock, we reached camp 2. The winds finally died down there, and then we went to the summit. About 10 o'clock in the morning, we summited. This was by far my longest summit push ever. I've been on many mountains in all over the world. This was 23 hours continuous walking. We went to the summit at 10 and we walked back to camp 1 by, do the math. But yeah, 23 hours and we were back at camp 1. taught me everything. We had ghosts on this mountain. We had people possessed on this mountain. We only didn't have a death. I became the youngest person in the world to have climbed Satopan at 18, which was like the coolest thing ever. Like, considering that I was like the youngest, the most immature, the least experienced, it was the coolest thing that we did. That's me there. Everest expedition, I've only joined it for Satopan. As a budding mountaineer in NIM, all my instructors, like my favorite instructors, hated Everest. They were the kinds that said, unclimbed peaks and unnamed peaks and technical peaks where 6,000 meters or 7,000 meters is the real game. That's where you're a mountaineer. Everest though, Also, I think good mountaineers say that because Everest is so expensive and to get sponsored, it's just like, anyone can do it. So, I'd rather do unnamed peaks that cost 10,000 rupees instead of climbing a peak that costs 30 lakh rupees, right? The same instructors, when I came back from Satopan, said, Krushna, you have to climb Everest. If you can climb Satopan, you can definitely climb Everest. And I was like, you were the ones who said you should never be bothered to climb Everest. And they were like, well, if you climb Everest and you have it on your resume, then you can get sponsorship for unnamed peaks. That's yet to happen, but it was a good motivation to go for Everest. This was the ridge also coming down. And that is our camp. See, that's camp 1 there. It's the last bit of the ridge, just behind us. And so I was commanded by Everest. As mountaineers, we also believe that a mountain calls you. A mountain commands you. And most of the times when you're on the mountain also possesses you. I remember whenever I have been on a climb, I have been so obsessed with it, so focused on it. It even doesn't matter whether we reach the summit or not. As all our instructors have always told us that summiting is optional. Returning is mandatory. However important the goal is, it's not more important than your life. It's something that is a contradiction again. You have to give it all your work. You have to give it all your heart. If I have to jump a crevasse and I think twice and I'm like, oh my God, whether I should jump or not, will I reach there or not, then I will definitely go inside. But if I just say, okay, you know what, I'm going to get to that side and give it all my will and then jump, I will get to that side. But Satopan also taught me one thing. I had returned to the Gangotri Valley after 8 years. I had been there as a 9-year-old or 10-year-old, and I had returned to it 8 years later, and the valley had changed. Being in the mountains and being in the nature, you realize how much as a human species we've been destroying our habitat. When I went on Satopan, when we went on the Gangotri Glacier, the glacier was huge. We could actually see how tall it was. I still remember the first time that I'd seen the glacier. And the second time when I went in 2008, the glacier had receded. There was throughout the valley, you could see a line where the glacier used to be, and the scraping of it had like brought the granite and the stones down. So you could actually see like a scar on the mountains from where the glacier receded. 18 kilometers we had walked that time. This time when we went, we had walked about 19 kilometers, which meant that the glacier had receded in my mere lifespan of 8 years by a little less than a kilometer. And that was alarming. Throughout the expedition, when we come back after 1.5 months of being in complete wild and being in complete nature, when you come back, you realize that as a lifestyle, as a part of who we are becoming today, we just blindly follow things, whether it's traveling by cars, whether it's garbage, whether it's the lifestyle that we as a human species have developed is only against our nature. It's only against the habitat that has cultivated us, that has made us. And we've totally forgotten that. It's all about what we want to do, where we want to reach. I remember when I was in school, my best friend's father had once told me that when their generation was growing up, everyone had one dream. That one day I will buy a car for my family. That will be, the pride. He said that your generation should decide that I will never buy a car. Your generation should have a vision that says that I will build a lifestyle where I don't have to buy a car. I mean, just think about it for a second. Do you think you can envision? I mean, as kids, I remember I wanted to buy this SUV and that Range Rover and that car or that Ferrari. But today I feel like, why? Do I really need to? Climbing is something that got me to this realization. Everything that we read in textbooks, that we see on National Geographic, that we read in geography textbooks, is something that I saw. I saw the rivers form. I saw the little streams. I walked from the little streams to the bigger streams, to the bigger ones, and the ones that joined the river. And then the same river came to Allahabad, and the same river went through Rishikesh. And I've seen how the human interaction with it has changed it. And it changes you. It makes you want to change the way we live our lives. After that, whenever I came back, instead of taking my mother's kinetic and zipping to meet my friends, I took the cycle. I walked to class. I tried to do every little thing that I could make a difference with. And therefore, I would say that everyone should at least once do a mountaineering course in their life. Whether you become a mountaineer or not, whether you're interested in the mountains or not, just to realize the power of nature, the importance of its role in our lives, you should once do a mountaineering course. By the time I got on Everest, I joined the Eco Everest Expedition 2009. It was an international expedition. We had 5 Americans, we had 1 Dutch climber, we had 1 German climber, and me. I was the only girl, so I was treated like a princess. And for all of them, Everest was the last 7th summit. Till I went to Everest Base Camp, I had no idea about the 7 summits, even as a mountaineer. So, and it was a big revelation to me because I always wanted to travel the world and dance actually. But now that I was climbing, I was like, wow, I can travel the world and climb the highest peak in every continent. My team, I was led by, our leader was Apa Sherpa, who was a 22-time Everester. And the year that we climbed, 2009, he was climbing for the 19th time. And I was 19 years old. It was really cool. We also had an American, Bill Bird, who became the eldest non-Asian to have climbed Everest at 64, which was amazing. We had 1 death in our team. One of our Sherpas, we had a huge avalanche that came on the 7th of May. Thankfully, I had finished my rotations. So also, I think, how many of you have seen Everest? Okay, not many. But okay, so like you've seen in the movie, we don't just go and climb Everest. We don't just go to base camp and then just go to the summit. Because Everest is all about altitude, and the main thing on Everest is to acclimatize your body to the mountain, to the altitude, to the less oxygen. Our base camp is at 5,300 meters, and above this, your body doesn't recuperate. It doesn't, if I say it in Marathi, angala kai lagat hai. So whatever you eat doesn't really go to your body. It's just there. Right? So we do rotations, and every time we do rotations, we carry our rations up, we carry our oxygen up, we carry loads up, we dump tents. So I did 3 rotations, and on every rotation we go and dump something. There were 27 teams at base camp the year that I was on Everest. Let's do this. All of us at least do 3 rotations to make sure that we have a good shot at going to the summit. And generally when we come back, we have empty rucksacks because we've dumped everything up there. And so my leader, Steven Sherpa, started a campaign called the Cash for Trash campaign. And basically in the campaign he said that every kilo of garbage that is brought down above base camp will get 100 Nepali rupees. Old trash, not new that year trash, old trash. And mountaineers and Sherpas just went crazy. We had kilos and kilos of garbage that just poured into our camp. We had mountaineering equipment from the 1950s, the 1960s, the 70s, like all the years. It was like a museum. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the trash actually went to museums. A lot of the torn tents and sleeping bags went to an art school that made something out of it. So yeah, that's the trash that we started collecting. We found a helicopter piece from the 1960s, an entire router that was like a ton. And what happens with these, with iron in the glacier is that it attracts more heat and therefore melts the glacier even faster. So it's really important to get every metallic object out of the snow. We got 8 tons of garbage down that year. And approximately every year, on an average, sometimes 6, sometimes 7, sometimes 8 again, the Everest expedition every year has got about 8 tons of garbage down. And that is something that really motivated me to do something in our own areas. Garbage, I think, has been a problem, or I have been bothered with garbage ever since I was a child, especially the past 4 years that I've been in Bombay. I've traveled in locals and I've hung outside, and all you can see is garbage. Like, it is like we're not even bothered about it. Nobody is bothered about it anymore. It's like we have learned to live in filth. As a society, you might have a clean house, and you might have a clean car, and you might have a clean society. But as a civilization, as a species, especially India, we have learned to live in filth. And that is really awesome. Okay, so my Sherpa and me were a team. If you've seen Everest again, you know. And even if we are a team, when we climb individually. So that even if I get sick or my team members get sick, I still can go for the summit. So my Sherpa was my companion, my buddy, and when I was on Everest, I think I was the fittest. I had no problems whatsoever. Like, I had absolutely no health problems. I had excellent weather throughout the expedition. We had the second time that I went on the rotation in the Khumbu ice fall, we had a small avalanche that thankfully, so when we go into the Khumbu ice fall, we are given times that if you are in this part of the Khumbu ice fall, you have a 20-second reaction time if an avalanche is set off. If you are here, you have a 10-second gap. If you are here, you have an 8-second gap. If you are here, you have an 11-second gap, or, depending on where you are, we've been told exactly how many seconds we have to save ourselves in case an avalanche comes. Which means you have to sit down, go into position, make yourself secure, hold the rope, hug somebody, whatever that you can do to save yourself. So I had a small, tiny avalanche experience, and thankfully it completely stirred away and went that side. But the entire Kumbu ice fall shakes like that for 2 seconds. It's like a tiny earthquake. This is the view from the Hillary Step. So I'm at South Summit, and this is the Hillary Step. You can see our amazing weather. The photograph is a little blurred because the camera is sleepy still. And magic, like the most iconic moment in the whole of my climbing career comes here. I was at South Summit at 5 o'clock and the sun had just begun to rise. From a horizon that was below me. The horizon was actually below me. From where I stood, the sun was coming up from below me. And to the other side, there was cast a shadow of Mount Everest that went above the horizon. So I basically stood between time. There was light on this side and darkness on this side. And what I was standing on had cast a shadow on the left side, on the rest of the world. So that's the picture. I mean, this is like 5 minutes later because, again, the camera switched off and all of that happened. But for me, this moment was the most magical moment of all. I think as a generation today, we stand at this exact point. We stand where our environment is in complete darkness, or a little light maybe nowadays on the sides. We have technology, our sun coming up, our power coming up, that can illuminate everything. Not just our luxurious lifestyle, not just our lifestyle, but everything. And we're standing on an Everest that we have climbed. We have climbed as a species, we've climbed as a civilization. But we ourselves are casting a shadow on our environment. It's something that we need to take care of. We need our sun to rise higher so that there's no shadow on this side. And I think we need to make that happen. I hope to build a civilization that is inclusive of nature. In every step that we take, in every breath that we take, if we can think about, if industries can think about environment like this, I think we'd have a whole new world. I think plastic is something that is we've known for many years now that it's one of the most harmful things. It's totally indestructible. Nowadays you recycle them, you make cans sometimes, you make a few other things. But I was recently in Nepal. I actually came back after 6 months from Nepal after the earthquake. And initially I went to Nepal for some relief work, but after about a month or two of relief work, we realized that the biggest problem in Nepal now was rebuilding. There were villages that were completely shattered, brought down to dust, and they needed earthquake-proof housing. Picking up the same stones and building the houses just didn't make sense. And many years ago, I'd seen, I think about 6 or 7 years ago, I'd seen an internet thing where a Nigerian village had made houses with plastic bottles. Have anyone of you seen it? Yeah? So they made houses with plastic bottles filled with sand. And these houses were earthquake-proof, they were bulletproof apparently also. And they were insulated. So like 42 degrees outside would be 24 degrees inside without using electricity or without using more power. And recently, I think about a year or 2 years ago, I read about a Norwegian school that started the concept of a magic brick, where they told their students to collect their garbage in bottles, pack them tightly and make magic bricks that were then used to make classrooms and stuff like that. When I was in Nepal, I thought that was the perfect solution. Nepal has villages high up in the mountains. I think one of the highest villages are about 4,000 meters. And luckily, because there's so much international tourism there, there are shops garbage down from these big villages? What if we let it be there and actually construct with it? So, we built the PET trash construction technology. We packed plastic bottles with trash, with non-degradable waste, just plastics and layers and packets like that. It becomes really hard. We did all these tests on it and it's indestructible. Plastic PET is like, will stay in your oceans and your landfills for about 300 to 400 years. And that becomes a benefit for housing. Like if your house is going to stand for 300 to 400 years, you might as well build castles there. And we filled them with trash and we made these houses there. And one room that is about 10 by 20 feet took care of 6,000 bottles. Each bottle takes about 500 grams of plastic waste, which means that one room took care of 3 tons of garbage. 3 tons of plastic waste out of the surface. Public toilets and footpaths and dividers with this technology, you will never see garbage. And another cool thing is that we put garbage into the highest grossing industry of infrastructure. In Bombay, it's like infrastructure is the biggest business, right? So if you can put something like garbage into something as profitable as infrastructure, then you will never ever see a problem. Today, every ecological solution, every solution that is good for nature is thought of as a monetary burden. It is the path less traveled, it is a road that you have to make. It's definitely the tougher path, but I can assure you that this road less traveled and this tougher path will bring you to avenues that have not been discovered, to views that nobody has seen in this world, and it will always be worth the effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out to come and speak to us. I was extremely inspired and humbled by your story, and I hope that everyone is able to imbibe the lessons that you taught us today.